Hi listeners, Jason here. On behalf of FlourishDX, I'm excited to announce that the premier conference for psychological health and safety, PHSCon, is returning to Sydney on the 8th and 9th of September 2026. This will be the third year of the conference, and each year we've worked hard to make it even better while holding on to the strong community feel that makes PHSCon different. This year, we'll be exploring 4 key themes shaping the future of psychosocial safety: consultation, collaboration, culture, and compliance, through our usual mix of live podcast recordings, fireside chats, practical sessions, and industry case studies. We're also thrilled to welcome Dr. Will Fleming and Professor Maureen Dollard in person for 2 special live recordings of the Psych Health and Safety podcast. If you joined us previously, you'll know tickets moved quickly, so avoid the FOMO and secure your place now at phscon.com. I can't wait to see many of our regular listeners there. Now, on to this episode.
From FlourishDX, this is the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. With workplace mental health becoming a safety prerogative, this is the source of information on psychological injury prevention and health promotion.
Hi listeners, Jason here. Today is a very special crossover for the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. 4 years ago, we began supporting Dr. I. David Daniels to produce and distribute the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. It all started with episode 1 and myself, Joel, Peter Kelly, Marianne Baton, and David doing a joint podcast discussing our various perspectives based on work in our respective countries. 4 years later, we recorded another episode together to discuss what has changed in that period and to officially hand over the reins of the USA podcast to David as he takes the podcast in new directions. I hope you enjoy this special episode with our friends from around the globe.
Welcome to this episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. I. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Our goal for each episode is to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. Over the past 4 years, I've spoken to 190 unique guests across 170 episodes about various perspectives on psychological health and safety. But no guests are more knowledgeable and more special than the 4 people I'll be talking to in this episode. On June 28th, 2021, FlourishDX conducted a live event involving all 4 of my guests. At the time, I was working on a dissertation towards my doctoral degree in occupational health and safety. I could argue that event not only changed the course of my research, but potentially the course of my life, and ultimately led to me becoming the host of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. The podcast is making a transition, and we'll talk more about that toward the end of the episode, but there's no group I'd want to talk about more than this one. So without the formalities, we're just going to start talking, and we're going to talk for the next 45 minutes or so. But I want to take the time to introduce, as I so often do, the guests, because I think there are still people in this country who haven't met these folks. If you're in the industry, if you're out flying around the world, you've seen all of them. But for those of you who've not met them, in person or seen the mothership, the Psych Health and Safety podcast, I just want to take a little bit of time to have each of my guests introduce themselves, and we're going to start with the leader. So here's the question: who is Jason Van Schie?
David, first of all, congratulations on so many episodes. And yeah, it's been really great to support you over this time, and looking forward to doing this last one with you. Obviously, last podcast in this format. Hopefully I get invited as a guest maybe on the new podcast format. But who am I? I'm a failed athlete. I really wanted to be an NBA player when I was young. I guess fortunately for Joel, who I've employed since, I actually went down the psychology route, became an organisational psychologist, and started to specialise in psych health and safety back in 2018. And I guess I'm probably most known for hosting the Psych Health and Safety podcast and founding FlourishDX, a company devoted to improving the way that people work to improve mental health outcomes.
Okay. And we're going to hear more. Certainly going to hear more. How about this? Who is Joelle Mitchell?
That depends who's asking, David. But for the purposes of this podcast, so I'm an organisational psychologist. I'm in Perth in Western Australia. I guess my work experience has been in safety and risk management throughout my career, including some time with the regulator for the offshore petroleum industry here in Australia. I've been working with Jason for 5 and a bit years, and I am the co-host of the Psych Health and Safety podcast, the OG Psych Health and Safety podcast.
Right on, right on. Yeah, the podcasts are all of us psych health and safety people are all trying to be someday. Okay. Switching from Australia to Canada, who is Marianne Bainton?
Well, a fan of all the people on this podcast, and someone who is lucky enough to be asked by Jason and Joelle to do the very first year of the podcast in Canada. And it was such a learning experience for me, not just the technology, but the people that I got to meet. And I started off in workplace mental health, and it morphed into psych health and safety here. And I was privileged to chair the technical committee for the National Standard of Canada on Psychological Health and Safety. And it's currently being rewritten. So, yeah, it's been a journey.
Absolutely. And across the water in the UK, who is Peter Kelly?
I'm a retired health and safety inspector. I now run my own company in mental health called Being Real, Workplace Mental Health Solutions. And but I started this journey expecting to be a clinical psychologist, but I ended up specializing in psychosocial risk and mental health through the development of standards, both at a national level and also at an international level, ISO 45003, and a recent standard on suicide prevention, which is BS 30480. And yeah, so that is my journey. 25 years I've ended up here on a podcast.
Well, one of the questions that Jason, Joelle, you all ask folks are the podcasts that you listen to, and I kind of listen to you guys. I listen to a couple others. I do have to be honest, but I really enjoyed the recent banter that you all were having about the standard, and Peter, you as a guest. It's always good to see people that, first of all, you actually, they know what they're talking about because you've heard them speak or been in their presence before. And I thought that was really interesting. And you know, even though the topic of suicide prevention can be kind of a downer, for some, I feel kind of energized by it because we're having conversations about things that are going on anyway, and actually, you know, having the courage to do something about it. So again, before we get into, again, more of that level of detail, the one question that I've asked all 190 guests and I've asked all of you all before because you've all been on now multiple times, and I don't know that maybe it hasn't changed much, but I want to hear it again. What does psychological health and safety mean to each of you? And I think how about, Joelle, how about we start with you?
Sure. I think for me, fundamentally, psychological health and safety is really about saying, if you've got people who are coming and giving you their time in exchange for money, certainly, but, you know, time is kind of the most limited resource that any of us have. And if you've got people who are spending their time working for you and helping you to earn money and be profitable and do, you know, achieve all of your business objectives, the very least that you can do is not cause them harm. But the amount of harm that can be caused through work, and not just physical harm, but, you know, psychological harm, and the impacts that can have on a person and on their family and on their community and on the economy, if we want to start talking, you know, more macro, you know, and the ripples that can have are just enormous. And there is just so much benefit for everyone involved if we do it well. Like, why wouldn't we try to improve things?
Absolutely. Marianne, what do you think?
Well, I think Joelle said it very well. It's a win-win situation. And I think the problem is some employers don't understand that it's not about being nice all the time. It's not about doing whatever your employees want to do. It's not even about giving everybody the job of their dreams. It is about doing no harm in a way that optimizes the energy, the focus, and the commitment of employees. So the employers who get it benefit from it. The employers who don't get it continue to put fires out.
Wow. Peter, your thoughts?
For me, you know what it is? It's those things at work which happen around us, and we need to give consideration to the fact when we talk about people's whole self, they might come in and they bring things into the workplace that potentially become hazards, but we can manage that. And we can manage those hazards. And it's, obviously it's in the title, it's psychological and social. If you go into a workplace and you're not supported, which is the social, element of it, you're going to be distracted and you'll probably engage in something or do something that's not going to be necessarily a right outcome. So it's both health and safety outcomes.
And Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going beyond good intentions to really give a robust evidence-based approach to making work not suck for people, right? And improving their conditions so it does lead to better outcomes for both the company and for the people's well-being that do the work. But it's really workplace mental health on steroids, I think. Historically, we've always focused on individual level interventions and largely reactive ones, whereas this actually gives us a chance to make work good for everyone that chooses to put their time into it. Which ultimately can have benefits for everyone who engages in a workplace like that.
Right. Yeah. I'm particularly struck by the words you use, the everyone part, because I think there are a lot of systems that they do work well for certain segments of the folks in the organization. And I've also come to believe over the years that some of that's not necessarily intentional one way or the other. It's not like you intended it to be good for one group or intended it to be bad for another group. That wasn't the intention, but that's the effect, because folks haven't sat down and taken the time to intentionally ensure that this is psychologically healthy and safe for everybody. And Peter, to your point, the conversation around bringing their whole self, I think is interesting. And I think people ought to stop saying it, because literally, bring your whole self. How about bring the part of myself that's going to help us accomplish whatever this is, whatever we're here to do. But I can't bring all of myself because you aren't built to handle all of me.
No, exactly. And I literally did a blog post that's come out today talking exactly about this. Because actually, your whole self isn't just a token statement like a CEO will make. Your whole self means every element of you, which is both. And we need to give that consideration. It is not a great word to use. And actually, you'll see that on my LinkedIn later on today. But I'm trying I think we need to tackle these misconceptions all the time. And we can do that through the podcast, or we do it through the blogs that we do. But there's a lot of things that happen out there which don't actually have an impact on people's psychological health and safety. They're tokenistic in nature. And we have to call it out.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Maria. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add that my early work was all around helping people with a diagnosis of a mental illness to return to work or stay at work. And it was watching that when a leader in particular, but an employer at large, had a psychologically healthy and safe workplace, although we didn't have the words for it then, it was really easy to accommodate an employee with depression, anxiety, to be able to do their work, not to get out of work, not to move things around. And that was really why we started to say, this is good for everybody. If we do it in a way that there's less conflict, less confusion, less pressure, everybody can bring their best self to work. And my best self today may be somebody with a mental health issue, but it doesn't matter if the barriers and obstacles are removed. I can do my best at work.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It is literally good for everybody, including the shareholders and customers and all the other folks. It's good for everybody. Again, it's been 4 years since I listened in to you all have this conversation, and I'd be interested what's different, if anything, in your country on this topic in the last 4 years. And Marianne, we'll go back to you. I mean, what's different in Canada from 4 years ago, if anything?
Okay, Jason's going to take credit for this, and maybe he can a little bit. Is that there is the shift from seeing it as the adding in of positive things to really looking at the hazards, right? And taking a more health and safety approach to it and really saying this is risk management more than helping employees or being nice. And so we're shifting to that risk hierarchy of controls. And I think the control word is the main thing, because you can do all the surveys you want. You can even talk to your employees, which is a critical part of it. But if what you do are campaigns or communication or pretty posters or even lunch and learns, if you're not going to the source of the hazard, which is often work design or leadership style or the way work is assigned or the pressure put on people, you're not really changing anything. So I think we're shifting in a positive way.
I don't know how I can take credit for that, Marianne. You've been at it since 2013. I only started in 2018.
Oh, but you've been a good influence on me, Jason, to look at it right from the beginning when you talked about what Flourish DX was doing and how it was doing it. It's been a great influence on me to think a little broader.
Absolutely. Peter, what about the UK? Has anything changed?
I think there's a maturity that's come about, which we no longer just talk about stress outcomes. We're actually talking about psychological factors in work. We still don't use the term everyone else uses, but that will change over a period. But, you know, when the suicide guide, prevention guide was launched, it was in the men's mental health strategy for the government on the same day. So I think that's where mental health has risen and mental health at work has risen through that sort of engagement. I think there's still a long way to go. I'd like to, see workplaces designed around people, not around systems that are there. And, we're sort of talking about the fact that we design messages for it's good to talk, and then but we don't facilitate work environments where men could talk. So we blame the men, but we're not necessarily not looking at the system and going, maybe it's something about the messaging. We have to be creative in how we talk about what we're doing on psychosocial risk. And we also have to be creative about how we get people to talk and not simply do an app and simply give you a head massage or resilience, because it doesn't work. I'm sorry, it looks good. All that resilient, when you make people resilient and you put them back in a toxic environment, they become more aware it's toxic, and then eventually they will burn out.
Right. Though you may have slightly different perspectives, I don't know. But Jason, how about you? What about what's going on in Australia in 4 years?
Just legislation changes, enforcement, convictions, enforceable undertakings. So it's really like we couldn't have planned it better, right, Joelle? Being in the right geography to focus on psychological health and safety, because Australia is taking it very, very seriously and really going after it, which is great because we're now having a number of, large companies that we get to work with in Australia who really very much are at the bleeding edge of, what could we do in this space and what does good look like, and continuing to advance what that looks like. But then, Australia then becomes a focus for multinationals who are looking at, again, what does good look like and what can we take from the Australian market and the Australian experience and translate into other markets. So, lots happening regarding, every jurisdiction now has specific regulations for psychosocial safety in place. There is enforcement action, lots of cases and things that we can point to now to show that this isn't just toothless legislation. And companies are starting to take it seriously, funnily enough. So it's good.
Right. Joelle, what could you add?
Yeah, so I guess Jason's kind of talked about the big picture stuff in Australia, and then, sitting beneath laws and regulator activity and that sort of thing is the companies and how they've responded. And I think that there's a lot of variability there. For a lot of companies, it is just focused on, well, what do we need to do in case we get an inspection and how can we pass the inspection? But, certainly there are a lot of companies out there that do actually understand that there is benefit for them beyond just avoiding, regulatory risk. And so we are certainly seeing meaningful change and meaningful movement in the right directions in a lot of businesses in Australia, and from very big businesses through to probably medium-sized businesses is who we work with. So not so much insight into what the small businesses out there are doing, but definitely a lot has changed, I think, in 4 years. And that's certainly been driven through the legislation. But then, lots of people across so many organisations in Australia and globally who really are committed to doing this and to doing it well. And, now that they've got the levers that they needed to be able to pull, they're able to really get their teeth into this work and make that meaningful change.
Are your psychosocial safety investigations creating more harm than they prevent? When complaints involving bullying, sexual harassment, or other psychosocial hazards arise, poorly designed investigation processes can increase distress for complainants, respondents, and even investigators themselves. Do your processes leave people in limbo for months? Are HR and safety still running separate investigations that duplicate effort and increase the risk of re-traumatisation? And are you confident that your approach meets obligations under both WHS and industrial relations law? If your investigations approach needs an uplift, FlourishDX has launched a new accreditation program designed specifically for internal professionals. The Psychosocial Safety Investigation Method, or SIM, provides a practical, integrated framework for investigating psychosocial safety matters in a way that aligns HR and safety approaches while reducing the risk of further harm. You'll leave with practical tools, templates, and processes you can immediately take back into your organisation to strengthen your investigations capability. SIM is the new industry standard for psychosocial safety investigations. Register for an in-person or online accreditation course at flourishdx.com.
I can add that things have changed in the U.S., in two different ways. Again, we talked a little about this before we started to record, but I think some would look at some of the things that are going on and suggest we've gone way backwards, and I agree. But on the other hand, I also believe that we've got some real progress going on here, and a lot of it, I will give credit to the three of your countries, because we have lots of big companies who started in the U.S., but they have a presence in Australia, Canada, the UK. And because of your legislative approaches, of the standards that are in place, or what the conversation is being had, they're having to come up whether they want to or not. They can't operate the same way that they operate in the United States. And then folks in the U.S., they'll fly over, they'll have a meeting with someone in one of your countries, and they'll go like, well, hold up. If they're doing this thing over there, how come we can't do that thing over here? So while I don't suspect that we'll have any type of national legislation soon, we do have some really interesting, conversations going on. And I'll call out a couple of them. There's an organization called the Work Stress Prevention Alliance that just launched in the last few months. As a matter of fact, my goal is to get the leader of that effort on, here fairly soon to have some conversation. But it's an entire group of folks who are interested in psychosocial hazards, psychosocial risk, the entire conversation. And I love it. I don't know, somebody passed my name to somebody and I got invited to a meeting and I kind of keep going. There's another group, the Society for Total Worker Health has been, they don't use the same words, but the total worker health concept and psychological health and safety to me look the same. They really do. When you take them apart, they look the same. It's this broad approach to making sure that work is more than just, well, people didn't slip and hurt their back. Or they didn't, the building didn't catch on fire, but really looking at the human beings and how the human beings are affected. So I would say that and there are other efforts that are going on, and a lot of it is individual companies, individual people, individual groups that are just getting together and starting to think about, this could be better, because we've actually now seen examples from other folks, and, you all are the examples that are leading most of these conversations. The other question is, I'm going to jump around here, is because we are kind of following your lead, how about if I, take my place on the psych health and safety couch and ask, what advice would you all give, not only the United States, but other countries who haven't gotten as far down the road as you have? What kind of advice would you offer to get better, to help things be better? So Peter, we'll start with you. If you were giving advice across the globe about what countries should be doing, what would you say? What would you offer?
Well, I'm fortunate to have worked with a couple of global companies that have got footprints across the world. And the advice I gave them was, make sure all your systems are integrated. That if it's in one country, it needs to be in the other countries. Not simply saying, well, we'll do this because we're in this regulatory environment. If you're going to do this properly, it has to be systemic and it has to be across all of the organization. Stop giving, credence to apps and to, tertiary interventions such as resilience and mindfulness training, and actually look at the job, see if the job can be done differently. And what is it about the job that maybe makes it uncomfortable for people? Let's be creative in our messages. You can't just do a well-being message and assume it's going to land. It might not land depending on the makeup of the people that you're with. There are some things that, it's like when in the early days of this, when we were trying to get messaging about asbestos out, we had to target our messages in a certain way to get people's attention. And that's the same now. I think we've become a little bit lazy, if I'm honest. I think we just go for a default and we'll put this in place and that'll be okay. We are seeing apps that are generated by AI. They've got no evidence base behind them. Think about what you're getting. Ask the questions. Where's the evidence base? Where's it come from? And I think we would do that with every other safety issue in the workplace. And when it comes to mental health, we're not asking those questions. So I think that, sorry, it's a little bit of a rant, but I think it's important, that actually know what you're buying. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jason, what would your advice be?
A couple of things. So first of all, don't confuse terminology. All of you on this call would know and have experienced when people conflate psychological safety and psychological health and safety together. And it really leads to a lot of confusion and a lot of activity, but not necessarily something that drives improvements in mental health and positive work design. So that's one. Make sure the language is right, and equally, don't shy away from terms like psychosocial. It is in international standards and whatnot. I don't think it's good enough to say, oh, people are scared or don't know what that term means. Teach them what it means, right? Like, it's not that hard. We've got an accountant who's our chief operating officer, and we taught him, didn't we, Joel? Psychological, point at your head, it's in here. Psychosocial, it's out there. Those things out in your environment that impact on how you think and feel and then your behavior. So it's not that hard. Take the time to teach people, what's what. But really see psychological health and safety beyond what Pete was saying around, making sure you choose evidence-based interventions when you choose something. Actually practice evidence-based practice. Don't just jump in with the latest and greatest, shiny, flashy mental health intervention. Do a diagnosis first. Find out what your people actually need. Then choose the most appropriate intervention, which often doesn't cost a thing. It's actually changing their work, not adding something new. And then go back and measure and see, did that thing that we do actually make a meaningful difference? It's not that hard. I mean, that's, anything to do with mental health, regardless of where you're dealing on the mental ill health side or on the workplace mental health side, you should be following that 3-step formula: diagnose, intervene, measure, and then keep doing it.
Right. Joelle, thoughts?
Like, work is a social determinant of health, I think, and thinking about psychological health and safety with that framing and trying to keep that framing front of mind, because it is so easy to slip back into thinking that it's about supporting individuals, getting them into help, early intervention, those types of things. But we really do need to just always think about what's the system here that's impacting people, and what can we do about the work that people are doing and the working environment that they're employed in to improve their health, not just their mental health, but their health overall. And that principle really should be kind of underpinning any of the work that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Marianne?
So yes to everything that my colleagues have said. But my advice is really that we have to more and more look at it from risk management. Because in Canada, although our standard is voluntary, we don't have the assessment legislation like exists in Australia. Our courts, our human rights tribunals, our workers' compensation, and our general duty clause for occupational health and safety are all holding employers responsible to do no harm. And one of the simplest way to get started, and this is for all of our American employers, is just ask your employees what might get in the way of you doing your best work. You're not saying, how can I make you happy for the rest of your life? How can I give you the job of your dreams? You're only asking what might get in the way. I was working with somebody who was in mining, and he said that what he had done, it was actually on the Psych Health and Safety podcast, he said that he asks people, what's on your mind today? What might get in the way of you being safe on the job? And that question more predicted accidents or injuries than, do you have your hard hat? Do you have your steel-toed boots? So yeah, it's not rocket science, but it's in the interest of the employer to do this now, not when they're legislated to do it.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly that legislation in and of itself isn't the solution. I mean, and frankly, some of the conversations I've been having, if you think about, really great employers, they don't do things just because they have to. They do it because they believe they need to, because it's going to be better for them. And Marianne, to the point that you often make, this is not about the job of your dreams, because it isn't. I mean, there are things about work that are going to be hard. That's not the point. I so often talk about my fire rescue career. They were really clear that my job was going to involve going into buildings on fire. I mean, there was no shock. I wasn't surprised. What I was surprised about was the emotional trauma associated with some of the things that we were going to do they didn't talk about. And some of it is just having the conversation is so ultimately important. And if you've got to be legislated to do that or forced to do that, I'm not sure I'm not sure that people will want to work for you. I particularly, I think that, I describe myself as a Gen Zer who was born 37 years too early. I think a lot of them have figured this out to go like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be treated like that. I don't, I'll go do something else. I'll start a YouTube channel and live in a van first before I'll put up with some of the things that my parents and my grandparents put up with. And I think they figured it out. And again, these are kids. I mean, they're getting older as I get older, but they figured this out just based on being a human, just on being, and Peter, to your point, just on being a real human. And it doesn't take, a big, complicated system. It takes a recognition that this is important and that the human beings are important. And so I'm going to toss this out to whoever wants to answer it first. Looking into the future, what do you think 5 to 10 years from now is going to look like based on our trajectory? So you can, however you want to describe that, whether your country, the rest of the world, where do you think we're going in the next 5 to 10 years in this whole conversation about psychological health and safety?
Oh, where are we going? Who wants to go first? Well, we're moving away from stress toys and stress cats like this. We're going to move, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, there will be a maturity, probably not at the pace that we require it, but actually that people realize that workplaces are not just about the output of what you produce, it's how you're getting people to the products that you're producing. And we will see, hopefully, a maturity in psychosocial risk in people at recognizing hazards in the workplace. But we will still have to keep messaging and telling people that the systems are very important and that what you do how you design systems around people.
I'll add that I think AI and the evolution of technology is going to do a lot of the routine tasks. And more humans are going to be required to use discernment, judgment, empathy, compassion, and awareness. And we know that when the human brain is stressed, the critical thinking, the executive function is reduced. So to optimize what employees can do when their jobs require that brain capacity means that we have to have systems and leaders who take out of the way the things that reduce it in order that the people that you hire can do their job well. So I really think that more and more employers are going to see, if we want the human advantage that isn't given to us by machines, we have to optimize that.
When you said the next 5 years, David, I was just thinking like, well, goodness, who knows? Who knows? If we're in the middle of a poly crisis, who knows if, we'll be slime at the bottom of the ocean in 5 years. So if I'm thinking optimistically, what I would really love to see in the next 5 years is that the companies who are starting to do things now start to see the benefits of what they've been doing, right? And yeah, maybe they were kind of doing it a little bit begrudgingly because they had to, but what do you know? Our turnover rate has dropped and we're getting a better caliber of applicants when we're recruiting, and our workers' comp insurance claims or insurance premiums have dropped, and we've got a better reputation in business, and actually our people are being really productive and really innovative and creative, and so many positives that it kind of creates a bit of a feedback loop. So they're like, oh yeah, there is actually a benefit for us doing this, and now we can be more intrinsically motivated to do these things rather than just relying on the regulator to poke us along.
Yeah, and we get asked that all the time, what are the benefits of doing psychological health and safety, or can you point to the ROI or all the benefits? And we all know the benefits, but it takes a while for that to actually, work its way through, particularly in large, complex organizations, to see those benefits. So we need more case studies, like showing those benefits so that more people are willing to do it. And maybe continue to reinvest or invest more in that, knowing that it's a benefit. But the other thing I'm hoping is that within large organisations, that people see it's everyone's responsibility. It's not just a health and safety person who is beating the drum and saying this is important. but HR understanding, hey, actually, the way we look at this could actually be improved if we think about, like Marianne was saying before, learning about things like, hey, could we apply the hierarchy of control when we think about redesigning this team's work? Can we think about, diagnosis, intervention, reassessment, continuous improvement, and rather than just a one-off sugar hit intervention? So I'm hoping, there's more ownership across multiple functions and that they work cohesively together to have a program that works, and we can evidence that.
Yeah, I think that, and I try to look at the world as balanced as I possibly can as I have more birthdays. I think there are going to be two kind of probably polar opposites. You're still going to have, because this is one of my sayings I picked up some years ago, that sometimes progress comes one retirement at a time. Sometimes it comes, unfortunately, one funeral at a time. And there's still going to be some people who are going to hang on to the bitter end. But I do believe there are going to be fewer of them. Just biology is going to catch up with. So the folks who think that work has to be this grind, it has to be horrible, and they're going to really take care of the problem themselves, because what they're doing to themselves, their bodies are not going to be able to continue to take that. The stress, the things they put themselves through. And I think, there are going to be some big changes in a lot of our big organizations because people are just getting old and need to stop. And the system is getting old and needs to stop. But the other thing that's kind of a more, probably a more positive look is the generation of people who have come up where conversations about mental health are not taboo, where, discussions about psychological safety are not weird, that observations that something is not psychosocially safe is not unique. So the language and the observations and the legislation that's already been passed, it absolutely is going to take root, and people are going to get it. And there will be, all sides of organizations are going to see, like, look, we've had our, retention rate is, 10% higher than it was last year and 15% higher than it was the year before that. The data is there. People are going to see it more than they've seen it before. And a lot of it is because of, the work that many of you all are doing. I have to be honest, because people are getting their information in different ways than they used to. They are not necessarily going to what we might call legacy media to get it. They're coming to, places like podcasts and whatnot to get their information. So I think it's going to get better. Again, there's still going to be some pretty difficult places to work for those who want to go there. But I think there are going to be more options for those of us who want to be in environments that don't stress us out and wear us out. So, hey, I think it's going to get better. As we start to wrap the discussion, I just want to give each of you an opportunity to share something about this thing that we've all kind of embarked in, sharing information over, a podcast, a social media, a teaching. Just share something to encourage all of us to keep going and to keep doing it. So, again, let's all of us take a time. I guess I really love having these opportunities to be in the presence of people who can inspire me and who can share stuff that's going to go, make me like, yay! So who wants to be first to be tell us why that we should keep doing this stuff and encourage the group?
Can I tell you why, but can I also give you a warning?
Okay, go ahead.
The warning is that every evolution of work has led to more work and more potential risk to individuals. Every evolution of work, which means the evolution in the AI revolution that we're seeing now will lead to more work and the potential. If we run AI and don't put any stop measures in place, we risk causing a problem for ourselves. But going forward, we have to make conversations about mental health, about psychosocial risk, normal in whatever context that needs to be for the person that wants it. Yeah. So it might not be a leaflet. It may not be an EAP. It might be something else. Let's be strategic in how we talk to people about psychosocial risk.
Okay. Marianne.
I just want to say that for those people who are listening to the podcast who already care about this, that if you surround yourself with people like I have, like all of you, that it keeps your energy, your motivation going. It helps you to keep learning different approaches, because the approach you use with one employer may be different than the approach you have to use with other employers, and not to get discouraged by those who aren't ready yet. For those who aren't there yet, there was a time none of us were there. We didn't understand, we didn't know. And to do the work because it matters, to do the work from your sense of integrity, like everybody here does, rather than hoping you're going to change the world tomorrow.
Joelle.
I mean, specifically on the question of encouraging you, David, to keep doing podcasts, like for me, it's one of the best parts of my job is getting to meet people from all over the world who are doing really interesting and innovative work and have, you know, a really good quality, in-depth conversation about what they're doing, and to be able to learn from them. And, you know, the fact that that conversation then is also shared with hundreds of people around the world is kind of a nice byproduct. You know, but for me, that opportunity has really been just really, I guess, unexpectedly wonderful. So that's my encouragement for you, David.
Right on. Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, that's how I sold it to you, right, David, when I said, hey, you've got a great voice for radio, buddy. But I said, you know your stuff. You've got a unique angle. There's not many black safety professionals, definitely not many that know psych health and safety as well as you do. Definitely not a published author. So use your unique view of the world and your, personal experiences to, spread the message, but, connect with people and give other people a voice. I was so thankful to Marianne for having you on her podcast as guest number 2. I was number 1. She had to have me. That was part of the deal. Because by doing that, I got introduced to you, and, my world's better for it. And, I know a lot of other, and she, was very deliberate around having yourself on because of your background, because of your ethnicity, and by giving you or convincing you to do the podcast, you've been able to raise up so many other people's voices from minority populations that normally don't get a chance, right? Like you mentioned before, psychological health and safety is about making work good for everyone, not just the people who fit the majority, of an organisation. And the only way you can do that is to hear diverse voices and seek them out. So I encourage you to keep seeking out those diverse voices, buddy, so that everyone gets a voice in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will say to the 4 of you is to keep doing what you're doing, because somebody's got to lead this conversation. They do. And I'd imagine that being out in front is hard some days. That you're trying to put something in front of people and they go like, "What's that? I don't understand. I don't see the evidence. I don't see the data. I don't see the ROI." But because you keep doing it, there's folks like myself and others who can go like, if they can do it, so can I. If they can try it, so can I. If they can make progress, so can I. And I am just so thankful to whoever came up with the idea 5 years ago to get you all together and have that conversation about 45,003. It is not. It might sound like it's being hyperbolic or whatever, but it really has changed my life. It really has. Just that thing. I had to get up, just like I'm doing now, getting up really early to have a conversation with you folks. I had to get up really early to listen to that, but I was really, things are different. And I do believe that things are different for a lot of people who have had the opportunity to be guests, or the opportunity to listen, or the opportunity to participate in some of the events. So it's cool. So keep on doing what you're doing. And of course, I mean, you're all not going to get rid of me that easily. Yeah, I assure you that you will not get rid of that easily, and we'll continue to talk. So again, thanks so much for all of your contributions to this effort. And we'll wrap this one up, but there's a lot more to come. For those of you who might be listening to this episode of the podcast or listening to one of these for the first time, welcome. I'm glad you stumbled by. But I also hope that you'll continue to listen and continue to watch. We'll be slightly changing the name. I'll just leave that, but the focus isn't going to change. We're still going to be having conversations with people, again, primarily from the U.S. because we need work. We got a lot of work to do here. But it's hard to have a conversation about this and keep it in the U.S. because the expertise is really in other places. So you'll still hear lots from me. So again, thanks for the opportunity to be the host of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast for these 4 years. And we're going to keep it going. Thanks very much. Really, really appreciate all of you, and have a psychologically healthy and safe day.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety podcast. To stay up to date with the latest on psychological injury prevention, follow Flourish DX on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Psych Health and Safety podcast at www.psychealthandsafety.com.